Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
Viola, where are you going again at this late hour? You need to lie down and not get up, otherwise you will lose your baby, shouted the nurse of the Eden Clinic to the woman in labor. Viola was frightened by the loud shout and quickened her steps to her room without looking back. She was sure that the medical staff was sitting in their offices. None of the pregnant women were in labor that evening, so they were unlikely to leave their offices until it was time for the night checkup. But it seems she's mistaken. There are eyes on them. Viola went back to her room, sat down in her bed, and realized she wanted something to eat. To avoid waking her roommate, she slowly leaned over to her nightstand and began rustling paperbacks. No matter how hard she tried, the noise could not be avoided. "V, I'm awake. Don't worry. Take out your goodies and eat. You'll need your strength soon," said the neighbor. "I'll need my strength soon too. I think I'll eat too." The neighbor started to slowly get out of bed. Viola took some paperbacks from the nightstand, put them on the table, and hurried to help her neighbor. She got up and sat on the edge of the bed. "Please help me get my food out of the nightstand, because with this stomach I can't bend over for a long time," said Berta to her helpful neighbor. Viola rummaged through the nightstand and found only one paper bag with some uneaten gingerbread. She took them out and spread them on the surface of the nightstand. Then she tiptoed to her nightstand, picked up her paperbacks, and returned to her neighbor. The neighbor sniffed, looked around, and stopped her gaze on Viola. "Are you smoking?" "Yes, I quit for a while after I got pregnant, but I have a terrible craving. Today I'm nervous. I couldn't take it. It's bad for the baby." "It could be. But do you really think that there's only one healthy thing around and one bad habit is the source of the whole disaster? Look at the air we breathe and what we eat. We have an industrial city. The air is filled with harmful substances from the activity of these factories. The products are all laced with all kinds of chemicals. And about the health of the baby, I am calm. I inherited strong genes from my parents. Get up. Let's go eat. I'm drooling," said Viola, and without waiting for the neighbor bit off her gingerbread. "What is there to smoke? I had no time to take a couple of puffs. Someone came into the toilet, and I had to throw out the good. Then the nurse drove me to the ward. No joy in such happy days." The women laughed. Berta clutched her lower abdomen. "My God, I can't even laugh now. The weight is pressing on all my organs. Oh, hurry up already, my finest hour has come. God will give birth, and I will sleep for 3 days in a row, turning over on all sides in turn," said Berta dreamily. "Yeah, dream on. And who will take care of the baby? On the contrary, after childbirth, a woman can say goodbye to a peaceful sleep." "I'm giving birth to my third. I know what I'm talking about," said Viola. "This is my first labor. I begged for my babies. 7 years married. Rhodes and I love each other very much, but we couldn't get pregnant, and I've been dying to give him a baby. I know he secretly dreamed of children too, but he never told me anything, so as not to offend or hurt me. So I persistently went to church every day and prayed to God. And so for almost 5 years. Last winter, I found out that God heard me. My tummy began to increase on its own," laughed Berta. Rhodes was over the moon, and when he learned that we will have twins, he was stunned, even cried from happiness. Berta dreamily looked out the window, biting off a large piece of chicken leg, which treated a neighbor. "So you're having twins? I knew it from your huge belly. Congratulations." Viola continued to munch on the chicken legs with gingerbread, occasionally taking a bite of pear. "Yes, we're having a boy and a girl. And we're finally having a boy. My 2 girls are looking forward to it, and my husband is calm. He knows what it's like to raise a baby. I always made him help me take care of the babies. So he even bathed the girls himself, changed their clothes, cooked porridge at night, and fed them himself. I was lucky to have him, Not every father can do that. I think my Rhodes will be the same. He's looking forward to it too. He's been thinking up names for the babies for 3 months. He prepared the room all by himself. He picked out the cribs himself. They're already made up. I told him we could do it after the birth. And he says no. I want to already accustom myself to the idea that we have a house full of happiness, and all carried with the preparation. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. The ladies barely had time to look toward the front door before it opened with a creak. You gluttons! Who's going to sleep? You're both about to give birth. If you don't get enough sleep, you won't be strong enough. Have a snack and quickly go to sleep. I turn off your light, said the nurse with a thin, squeaky voice, turned off the light and slammed the door. The time was near morning. Viola tiptoes down the corridor of the maternity hospital. After smoking 1 cigarette to the end, she was finally relieved. Suddenly, around the corner, she heard the scuffing of slippers and quick footsteps. It was the nurse again. Viola quickened her steps to get to her room, but then she remembered that she shouldn't cross the nurse now. She might smell it. Viola didn't hesitate and ducked through the first door next to her. There were no beds in the unknown room, but separate compartments with screens. A nightlight was burning in the corner, its half-light barely illuminating the room. Viola realized she was in the medical staff's office. Luckily for her, the door to this office did not creak. She closed it slightly and listened breathlessly to the nurse's footsteps. But suddenly she heard the clinking of dishes from the far corner of the room. I know her family well. She's a well-educated, well-mannered girl. Do you think any other girl would have been a member of the Malberg family? That's because Austin Malberg looked at her a long time before he married her. His mother and father made all kinds of tests for the girl until they realized that she was a worthy person. A woman's voice sounded behind one of the screens. Why don't they have children? Is one of them sick? A second female voice asked. Who knows? When I asked her about it, she shrugged her shoulders. She didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't want to inquire about it either. And what do we tell the mother of the twins? She will not raise a scandal. We will say that one of the children died. It happens in maternity hospitals, and it's no secret to anyone. Your task is purely technical, and I'll do the paperwork myself. You just don't let me down. The first female voice sounded louder and more commanding. I'm worried about what if. There shouldn't be any surprises. We're doing a good deed. We're saving a family. And that woman in labor, as I understood, the living conditions are not exactly luxurious to raise 2 children at once. The husband has a simple job. The wife seems to be a housewife, a modest family, so there should be no problems with them. Viola understood everything correctly. Someone from the medical staff wants to take away one of the children from the woman who is about to give birth to twins. In their explanation, they would say that the child had died, but in reality they would give it to a childless family. Viola carefully opened the door and closed it on the back side. Making sure there was no one in the hallway, she headed for her room. Her roommate was sleeping quietly. Viola went to the nightstand, took a couple of candies and headed to her bed. All her thoughts were preoccupied with the dialogue she had just heard. What if they told her after the birth that the baby had died and gave her son into the hands of unknown people? But the doctors were talking about twins. And was it this woman they were talking about? Eden is the largest clinic in the city. There could be other women pregnant with twins here. Anyway, it wouldn't hurt to warn as many girls as possible, thought Viola as the important thought crossed her mind. She tossed the candy on her bed and headed for the door again, poking her head out into the hallway and gazing towards the medical office she had just left herself. After a while she felt tired, but she didn't give up. She must be sure to see the faces of these workers and strive not to fall into their hands. After a few minutes, the office door opened. 2 women in white coats came out of there. One stepped away from the door and Viola could see Madame Valetti, the director of the Eden Clinic, in her. She is considered a strong manager and a doctor from God. The most influential and wealthy families book her in advance to manage pregnancies and deliver babies. She is trusted, honored, interviewed, and published in newspapers. The other one was locking her office door at that moment. Viola could not see the face of the second doctor. Lying in bed, Viola could not sleep for a long time. She had just witnessed a criminal conspiracy of doctors. She pondered her next steps. Her task was to warn as many women in labor as possible, while remaining incognito. Well, and it was her sacred duty to be vigilant in her own labor and not miss her baby. However, her plans did not materialize. When Viola woke up, in place of her neighbor Berta lay another pregnant woman. It turned out that Berta had already been moved to another room. When Viola asked the reason, the nurse said that Berta might have difficulties giving birth to twins. So the doctors decided to be prudent and moved her to a separate room. And her children would not be sold later to other people, Viola whispered in the nurse's ear, hoping for female solidarity and understanding. Are you normal at all, woman? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? We would have been in jail a long time ago for this, not listening to your nonsense. The nurse got angry, slammed the door, and left. Viola thought, we should look for Berta and talk to her sometime. Viola had barely had time to think when she felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. The flood of questions that had been worrying her since the night before was instantly gone. It had begun. She didn't realize she'd said the phrase out loud. She grasped the bottom of her stomach and waddled to her bed. Outside, snow fell softly. The stream of scowling city dwellers seemed to have diminished a bit due to the weather. Athena loves walking in this weather, dressed in a cozy long down jacket with a big hood. It's been 5 months since she's been outside. She has only a little time left to be patient. Then she would have everything and forever. And now she was pining from boredom and longing for a free life, when a person can move freely on the street and not hide from anyone. To brighten up her boring day, she drew water in the bathtub, lit candles, took out cold champagne and a bar of chocolate from the refrigerator, and went to the spacious bathroom in the elite penthouse. Gazing at city life from the 18th floor is something magical. In such moments of contemplation, it's as if time stops, and you are hovering over all the hustle and bustle and observing what's going on with complete objectivity. Athena can afford it even around the clock. She specially chose an interesting apartment for this period, so that the 5 months of unseen existence would not be so boring. In this penthouse, all the rooms face the open space. That means you can enjoy the scenery from any room, even the bathroom. The first few days of settling in, Athena was jubilant at such beauty. She could spend entire days either in the kitchen or in the living room, looking out at the sprawling city and the surrounding high mountains. But lately, even that had gotten a little tiresome. With these thoughts, she walked to the glass wall of the bathroom and threw off her light robe. Her luxurious forms were waiting for a new portion of love for herself. Warm water with fragrant sea salt, rose petals on the surface of the water, a fabulous view from the window, champagne with chocolate, and the exciting anticipation of a single call. As she lay in the fragrant warm water, her long dark hair stayed outside and fluttered gently over the edge. She lovingly stroked her breasts, waist, and legs in turn, caressing them with armfuls of gentle foam. Her body pined for a man's hands. Just a little longer, and my Austin will be with me forever, she thought. She had concrete plans for that. And that plan was already in the final stages of realization. As she was enjoying her cold champagne, her phone rang. Athena's heart jumped. If only it was the long-awaited call. She was ready to beg. Athena quickly turned off the flow of warm water, jumped out of the bathtub, grabbed her phone, and walked barefoot out of the tub. It was Austin calling. There was no way he could guess where she was or what she was doing. Yes, honey. How are you feeling today? Hi, honey. I feel awful. I miss you terribly, but I respect your decision. You're doing the right thing. How's Grandma? Any change? Is she talking to you? Austin asked. No, there's no change. I think it's gonna be a while. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about the baby. He's fine, but he heard your voice, and he's pushing. Athena rolled her eyes and squeezed her eyes shut at the audacity of her lie. Maybe you should think about moving your grandmother to the city. The medicine in the countryside is weak, and I can't forgive myself if something happens to you or the baby. Austin sounded quiet. It's gonna be okay, honey. I think we're going to make it through this whole ordeal. I gotta go, honey. Time to give the meds to Grandma. Kiss you and miss you madly. Bye. Take care of yourself, replied Austin. Athena hung up the phone and went back to lounging in the tub. She was a little disappointed that this wasn't the call she had been waiting for. In the last few days, it was as if time had stopped completely for her. She decided to wrestle back some certainty by making this long-awaited call first. Folletti, hi. I'm going to run out of patience soon. Tell me the good news, Athena said into the receiver. It's only a little longer. The babies are in good health and should be born any day now. The plan is fully coordinated with the other performers. Now we wait for the contractions to start, and then it's a matter of technique. Don't worry so much, everything will be fine, said Folletti. I will wait for a call from you, Athena answered and hung up. Athena, like all girls, from childhood dreamed of meeting a real prince. Unlike many dreaming girls, she did meet her prince. He turned out to be Austin Malberg, son of the Malberg dynasty. The Malberg family is of royal descent. According to the tradition of the disappearing Ubuntu people, the descendants of the king must always actively participate in the rule of the people. The previous representative of the family was Marcus Malberg. He gave 25 years of service to his country as ruler of the city and retired. Now his work should be continued by his son Austin Malberg, whom Athena married 4 years ago. Despite tradition, power is not simply handed over. An election is called in which the people choose the ruler of the city from several candidates. The favorite of the community was the Malberg's son Austin. His father had already managed to show true love and care for his people. So when it came time to vote, the people had no doubts about the choice of a ruler. Austin, in his 25th year, easily won the honorable position of ruler of the city and custodian of the Ubuntu nation's heritage. He and Athena met while practicing in a theological seminary. A lad raised in the spirit of nobility, with a shrewd mind and refined manners, was always the center of attention of the female sex. Despite his noble origin and the unshakable authority of the family, Austin was a modest and polite man. Athena is the complete opposite of him. She was born into a peasant family. Her father all his life saved money so that his daughter could get a decent education. Athena's mother fully supported him in this. Athena's fate turned out the way her mother secretly dreamed of it. Her studies brought her into the society of noble persons. In this circle, she was able to find close friends and her love in the person of Austin Malberg. When it came time to consolidate their romantic intentions of official marriage, Athena and Austin had to pass a number of tests. Austin's mother, coming from an aristocratic family, looked out for daughters from prominent families for her son. When her son told her that he had fallen in love with a simple country girl, his mother fell into despair for a long time. Then despair was replaced by anger. The mother called Athena for an introduction. After that, she gave herself a time during which she would try to discreetly rid her son of the society of this simpleton. Athena, too, realized that entering this family would not be an easy task. She had nothing to show for it but her love and her great desire to be near her beloved Austin. Austin's mother arranged one test after another, relying on the fact that the girl could not cope with them, would give up one day and leave Austin's life by herself. But that didn't happen. Athena didn't give up, she fought for her love. not as a warrior for victory, but as a woman for love. A woman's fight for happiness is an art form. One day, Austen's mother called Athena and invited her to a family event. She added that there would be guests from high society and unobtrusively hinted at the fact that such places do not come in casual clothes, which Athena is used to, that she would not hurt to pick up something decent from famous brands. Athena found a way out of this situation. For a girl in love, turning into a princess and back was never a problem. Another time, Austen's mother publicly reprimanded Athena, accusing her of lacking manners and education. Athena intuitively knew it was a test. The mother is testing whether the girl can hold her dignity when she encounters rudeness and barbs. After all, these are all part and parcel of the lives of nobles. Athena was not confused. She pretended that no incident had occurred and managed to maintain her friendly mood for the rest of the invited evening. When she grew tired of the unexpected, she decided to change tactics. She went to Austen's mother herself and sincerely asked her for advice. How to become worthy of her son? What rules does this family have? What sets of rules and regulations guide them when they go out into society? Austen's mother was somewhat surprised, but agreed to help. After a while, the mother really got in touch. She began to give sound advice and guidance on various life situations. Athena then realized that indeed she had many omissions in her behavior in the society of nobles. And with the help of Austen's mother, she was now gradually working on them and becoming her own in this circle. She greatly esteemed herself for this act. And after all these movies about love, novels, and fairy tales, where a poor girl tries to enter the family of the prince, a little lie. They lie that if the poor girl will go to a direct confrontation, shows stubbornness, clinging to the son, but does not accept the mother, then after a while she will certainly win. In life, this is not the case. To really become a representative of the elite and not to appear, you must first of all defeat your own selfishness and stubbornness. After this incident, there was a warmth in the relationship between Austen's mother and Athena. After a short thought, the mother even eventually gave her consent to their wedding. The wedding was not without mishaps because of the social gulf between the two families, but Athena stood up to it. For 4 years they have been living with their Austen soul to soul, but there is a problem. And it's a big one. Athena can't get pregnant. Austen's mother is not happy with Athena again. She hints from time to time that Austen must have an heir, because in the long run someone must inherit the rule of the city and the fate of the original Ubuntu people. Austen has been estranged from Athena of late. He spends a lot of time in public service. Often he may not come home for sleepovers. Athena replies briefly that he has decided to spend the night at the family residence. Athena realizes that the issue of Austen's baby is also a big concern. One day, Athena found herself visiting an orphanage as a patron of the arts. Lots of cute abandoned babies, longing for a mother's love and affection. Her heart had never felt so much compassion and mercy before. After this incident, she had a very serious desire to have a baby boy. She wouldn't mind taking 1 or 2 babies from this orphanage, but it's unlikely that Austen would agree to that, and his mother could certainly be furious. No, not because they're against a good cause. Adopting a child from an orphanage could play against Athena. She could be suspected of being childless. She could be considered unfit as a woman. In this circle, anything is possible. So Athena decided to take the long road. At least, the long road seemed more reliable and logical to her. First, she found a reliable person in her circle who could help her plan. She was Valetti, the mother of her student friend, a midwife with many years of experience and the head of the Eden Medical Clinic. Eden was once built with the Malberg family's money. The clinic quickly became prestigious in the town of Waitsville. It was the only unique clinic that took money only from the rich, and it gave it to the poor in the form of free treatment. Moreover, both the rich and the poor were treated to the same standard. There were no separate rooms for rich or poor clients. They didn't talk about money at all. Everyone was cared for equally. This concept also belonged to the Malberg family. Athena asked Valetti to help her find an abandoned newborn in exactly 9 months. According to her plan, she would pretend to be pregnant on a certain date. Then she would fake a growing belly, then labor and bring the baby home from the clinic. Valetti agreed to help find the baby, but she didn't understand how Athena was going to pretend to be pregnant in front of her husband. He would definitely notice the fake belly. Athena hesitated at this point and said that she had a plan for that too, and it would be quite workable. She advised Valetti to stay on top of their joint plan and look for a woman. She would take care of the rest on her own. Pretending to be pregnant for 5 months wasn't technically difficult for Athena. She took appetite suppressants, ate a lot and varied meals, slept a lot and moved little. And indeed, day by day her figure began to round out, her belly began to grow and bulge. Austin rejoiced when Athena announced that she was pregnant. Then he walked around sullen and pensive for a while. He and Athena rarely spent time together anyway, so she didn't dwell on it. When the 5th month of the pregnancy came, Athena informed Austin that her beloved grandmother was gravely ill and was asking her granddaughter very much to visit her. Grandma lives in her historic homeland in Holland. From Waitsville to Holland is almost 6,000 kilometers. Austin was against it at first, then, after thinking for a couple of days, agreed to let Athena go to her grandmother. 3 days later, the suitcase was packed and Athena supposedly flew to her grandmother. Upon her arrival, Athena found out that her grandmother was supposedly quite ill. There was no one to take care of her, and she, so beloved and dear, was almost at death's door. Athena, as a loving only granddaughter, cannot leave her like this. Now she supposedly makes a firm decision. She will return to Waitsville, either when her grandmother is back on her feet or when her soul has departed into the world of eternal rest. Austin will somehow accept that decision. Either way, she'll be with the baby when she returns, and the rest doesn't matter. That's the whole scenario Athena came up with. She never actually went to Holland, and she doesn't have an elderly grandmother there. She rented this luxury penthouse on the other side of town to hide out for 4 months while her false pregnancy took hold. Yes, it was incredibly difficult for her to constantly generate lies to her husband. First, she had to lie about how she got to Holland, then about her poor grandmother's condition, then about her brokenness for her grandmother. Then she had to lie about the difficult decision to stay with her until certainty. Then she had to regularly lie about the baby pushing and helping her care for her great-grandmother. Athena was getting tired of it all herself, but the prospect of giving a child to the Malberg dynasty motivated her. These winter days were already bringing those hellish 9 months to an end. Valetti had promised to be sure to find a mother cuckoo for that period. All that was left was to wait for her call, then fly to the clinic, pick up the baby, and return home. The trauma department of the Eden Clinic is always noisy. Here, you can often hear crying and sobbing, cries of pain and cries for help. After all, those who have just been the victim of an accident and suffered terrible injuries are brought here. Brave doctors try to save even the most difficult patients. Therefore, they are in this department the largest number. The flow of patients does not stop at any time of the day. Despite the atmosphere of desperate struggle for life, even in such chaos, there are inviolable rules. If 2 patients come in at the same time, an old man and a child, the doctors first admit the child and then the old man. As a rule, the relatives of such patients also treat it with understanding. When a 10-year-old boy with multiple injuries was brought here, the crowd of people in the courtyard and corridors of the hospital parted immediately. The staff quickly unloaded the stretcher and handed it over to the emergency room. Blood oozing from the boy's open wounds ran down the wheels of the stretcher, leaving behind a red trail on the surface of the hospital corridor. "To operating room number 12, shouted the doctor loudly, opening the door of this particular operating room. He was in full equipment, ready for surgery. He was followed by the nurses and 2 other doctors. The jewelry work of saving the child's life began. The boy's entire body was pierced with small shards of glass. The first thing the doctors did was to examine the head. Lucky, the skull seems intact, but the exact result will show the hardware study, which is already running in parallel mode. Another doctor cautiously checks the limbs for fractures. All is not well here. There seems to be a fracture in the leg below the knee. But what is a fracture to a growing body? And can it be considered a tragedy when you are hit by a car at 110 km/h? Your body flies 30 meters away and lands in the thick of bushes. Not at all. The boy was born with his shirt on. He'll be fine. So there's no point in rushing the parents. Let them arrive at the end of the operation. By then, the medics will have cleaned his body of small shards of glass, sewed up the lacerations from the branches, washed away the blood clots all over his body, restored normal breathing and pulse. Near the end of the surgery, the doctor asked if there was any contact with the boy's parents. The nurse reported that they were already aware of what had happened. True, the boy has only a mother. Nothing is known about the father yet. A couple of hours later, the boy was transferred to a separate room. So that he did not suffer from severe pain, he was injected with a large dose of sedatives and plunged into a deep sleep for a few days. This would be better for the baby's psyche. At this point, the boy's mother came running. She caught up with the doctor in the corridor of the clinic. "Doctor, hello. I'm the mother of the boy who was in the accident. My name is Viola. Please tell me, how is my child? Will he live? Just tell me the truth." The woman in hysterics almost started to shake the doctor, grabbing his collar with 2 hands. "Hello, your baby is fine. We've put him in an induced sleep. It's better for him and for you. If you want to be close by, you can visit him in the recovery room in the next ward. He'll need time to recover. About a month and a half. No major trauma, no bones broken, but the soft tissues pretty bruised, plus pain shock. Try not to bother him too much," the doctor said, and ran off to save a smoldering life. Viola found her son's room. She opened the door of the room and saw 2 nurses beside her son. Both were giving injections on different sides of the little body. Viola stood quietly in the corner until the kind nurses finished giving the injections. Then one of them pulled up a chair to the boy's bedside and nodded silently to the mother, making a gesture that it was okay to approach the boy. "Eddie, my love, my little." The woman couldn't hold back her tears. She gently stroked the boy's arm. Almost all of his body was in bandages, with a few fresh stitches on his face. Viola cautiously approached the boy's face. Despite everything the doctor said, she wanted to see for herself that her beloved son was alive. She put her face to the baby's face, felt his warmth. The boy seemed to feel his mother's touch as well. His body barely moved, but Viola quickly moved away from him and whispered, "Hush, hush, my good one. It may hurt you to move. I am with you. Mommy is always with you. You need to rest and recover. Thank the Lord God 1,000 times for you, my dear son. I pray to him for your life and health." Viola continued to whisper softly. Her tears rolled from her eyes and dripped directly onto the floor. After a long time, she felt that she was tired of crying. Yes, and it is not good. When the son remained alive, the doctors tried to save him and they almost succeeded. It was just a matter of patience, and a terrible thing could happen. Viola could lose her beloved son Eddie. There is no greater grief for a mother than the death of her child. She kept her eyes fixed on her son and ran through the thoughts in her head. Suddenly, she felt sorry for all the mothers on earth who had ever had to lose their child, to mourn his little body, to give a part of their heart to be buried in the cold earth. My God, let no one have such grief. Then her thoughts drifted to the past. She would never forget Eddie's birthday, and after all, He was born in this same clinic 10 years ago. What a coincidence that the Eden Clinic is giving him a second life. Viola was already crying with gratitude. She went to the window and looked at the light in the windows of the other Eden departments. 8 floors with hundreds of rooms and offices, a U-shaped building, and this is only one part of this huge clinic. The maternity ward is right across from the traumatology department. If you open the window and listen, you can even hear the screams of the laboring women. She remembered how she had suddenly gone into labor. After all, she had been preparing to go into labor a week later, but her son had decided to come out sooner. Suddenly, Viola remembered her room. There was a young woman, Berta. She was pregnant with twins. And at night, Viola accidentally learned that perhaps one of her children would be written off as dead by the head of the clinic and given to some powerful family. Viola never had time to tell Berta what she had heard. She was transferred to another ward in the morning under the pretext of increased surveillance. The next day, Viola herself gave birth. After the birth, she tried a couple of times to find Berta, but in vain. Only on the day she was discharged from the hospital, she saw Berta sitting on a bench. She no longer had a huge belly, but she didn't look like a happy mother. Her face was puffy, her eyes tearful. Right now, Viola regretted that she hadn't approached Berta then, hadn't given her children's fate the attention it deserved. It was only now, when the tragic prospect of losing her child loomed on her own horizon, that Viola realized how intense that grief could be. She felt immensely sorry for Berta. Somehow, she was sure that it was her child who had been stolen and given to other people. That night, feeling strong feelings of gratitude, horror, and heartache for the suffering of her child, Viola decided to do a good deed to find Berta and tell the terrible story. And if it suddenly turns out that Bertha's children were not the victim of a deceitful plan of the head of the clinic, at least it will soothe her soul. Maybe Eddie would make friends with the twins. Viola rejoiced at her thought. At that moment, Eddie let out a faint groan. Viola came running to his bedside. The small, swollen fingers moved faintly. It was as if the boy had read his mother's thoughts and was keeping them alive. For the next month and a half, Eden became a second home for Viola. She spends all her time here by her son's side, occasionally going home on urgent business. Eddie is already feeling well enough to get out of bed on his own. He goes for walks accompanied by his mother or father. While Eddie sleeps at lunchtime, Viola is free for a few hours. During this time, she chats with her roommates or with the free medical staff, although the medical staff is very rarely free here. Viola decided to waste no time and get to the important task as early as possible. First, she went to the maternity ward, talked to the women, and learned that the admission procedures had not changed at all. When a pregnant woman is admitted, they register all her data, check her documents, and then admit her to the ward. This was the case before, so Berta's data is in some stacks of papers. We just need to find out how to access it. Viola befriended a young girl named Ruse. She's a student who works part-time at the clinic. When the two women developed a warm enough relationship, Viola asked Rose for a small favor. "Rose, I know you have the opportunity to go into all the offices in this building. I'm interested in the document archive. If it's anything serious, I'm sorry, Viola. I'm afraid of being caught. You know, it's very strictly controlled here," Rose said. "It's nothing serious. When I gave birth to my son, we became friends with an amazing girl, but we didn't have time to exchange contacts. For some reason, I wanted to be friends with our children. It happens, suddenly her daughter and my son will get along, maybe even fall in love. Why not? Every mother wants a good match for her children." Viola looked dreamily out the window. "Well, if only that. Do you need the details of a certain Berta?" "Yes, all you need is her residential address and phone number. That's all, and I'll tell you the time of registration and discharge. It won't be hard for you to get your bearings. I owe you a favor," Viola said. "Write it down on paper and bring it to me this afternoon. I'll be cleaning the administrative area tonight." The archives are there. Thank you, Rose, so much. In the evening, Rose brought a small piece of paper with Berta's address and phone number written on it. It turned out that she lived somewhere in a neighborhood well known to Viola, so it would not be difficult for her to find the address. A couple of days later, Viola stood at the wooden gate of a small house. Despite its location near the city center, the neighborhood was poor. The entire street was made up of old, small houses. The road was broken, with grimy children playing along it. While Viola was looking at this picture, there was a voice outside the wicket. "Who's there?" "Excuse me, I'd like to see Berta Ovista. I have a business to attend to." A couple of seconds later, the gate opened with a creak, and in front of Viola stood Bertha herself. "Greetings. You probably didn't recognize me. Remember the Eden Clinic? You went there for your twins. I went there for my son. I went out smoking at night, and you and I ate all the 2 days and 2 nights we spent in the same room." "Well," Viola smiled. "Oh, right, Viola? That's how amazing it is. Come on home, let's have a friendly sit." Berta invited her guest into the house. They walked down a narrow path and found themselves in a small corridor that led to an equally tiny room that smelled damp. The room was quite dark. The furniture, covered in ancient bedspreads, gave off a peculiar odor of stagnation. A small table stood in the corner of the room. Bertha invited her guest to this table, herself ran to the kitchen for treats. Viola sat and picked up words. "How's your baby? You gave birth right after me, didn't you?" Berta asked. "Yes, the same day they took you to the other room. My Eddie is growing up to be a caring and intelligent boy. Recently, we had an accident, but God helped and my Eddie is recovering. It's against this backdrop that I thought of you. So tell me, what's going on with you? How are the babies?" Berta thought for a moment and then answered, "I thought I had both babies safely. But right after the birth I was told that my vitals were deteriorating and I needed to be hooked up to a machine. Then they gave me a shot, and then I don't remember anything else. I woke up only 2 days later. They brought me my daughter, said that the boy got tangled in the umbilical cord and failed to start his breathing. What do you think? Does it seem to be true?" Viola asked. "I still have my doubts. You know, I still dream about my son. We are walking down a long alley with my husband, and every time we lose our son, and he turns out to be lost somewhere and is looking for us on the other side. That's actually why I've been looking for you. I think your son is alive. Moreover, you can find him easily," said Viola, leaning back in her chair. "How do you know?" Berta's eyes lit up. "That night when I went out for a smoke, I wandered into the doctor's office when I was hiding from the nurse. That's where I heard them plotting their cunning plan. According to their plan, one of the women was going to give birth to twins, one of them was going to be registered as dead, and the baby was going to be handed over to a family, which of course you know. Come on, Viola, tell me, what family? Who are these people?" "The Malberg family." Berta couldn't believe her ears. After all, this family at that time was still grandly and publicly celebrating the birth of the heir. The deacon himself named the boy Cupid on live TV. Later he baptized him, and the whole country saw the whole process on TV. Can a lie be so global? On the one hand, Berta was happy that her son was alive. On the other hand, a logical question arises. "Viola, tell me, I'm dying to hold my baby. He's my son, my blood. How do I get him out of a strange family?" Berta begged. "Well, look, consider your son almost crowned. He's being groomed to be a manager. He'll inherit the Malberg fortune. Frankly, I can't imagine the reaction to your turnout. It could even be dangerous to your life. Remember, Berta, your decision to hug your son exposes at least 2 people, Valetti and Athena, the so-called mother of your child. No, I will find a way to get through to my baby, believe me. You can support me in this or not, but I will do everything possible to let my son know the truth." Berta wiped her tears. At that moment, the front door opened with a creak. "Christy, honey, are you here yet?" Bertha shouted toward the hallway. "Yes, Mom, I'm already home." Just then a strange girl came in, looking remarkably like Bertha. "Come on in, I'll introduce you to Aunt Viola." "Viola, this is Christy, my daughter." The same. Berta smiled, hugged her daughter, and stroked her hair. "Mom, why are you crying?" the girl asked. "Because Aunt Viola told me an important thing. I'll tell you everything later. And you change your clothes and sit down to dinner." Then Berta turned to Viola again. "What if I sue? Do you think that would help me get my son back?" "I don't think so. You'll have a mountain of problems. They'll ask you to prove that he's your son. And how can you prove it if you don't have access to him?" "Do you have enough money for genetic testing, for a lawyer?" Viola asked. "No, I don't. After I was told that my son was dead, I was depressed for a long time. During that time, my husband left me. My daughter and I moved into this house to survive. Now, I work as a cleaner in a restaurant. My earnings are barely enough to cover my daughter's expenses. I can hardly afford lawyers and forensics, but I won't give up. I'll find a way to connect with my son." Berta kept repeating that phrase over and over again. It was not difficult for Berta to find out what school the children of Whitesville's elite attend. It was the genius school with a closed area, with formidable guards and with high solid fences. Bertha had not seen this school before, although she had heard about it many times. She has seen advertisements for this school on television for so many years, reports on the life of this school, the activities that take place there. The elite have been in the public eye since she was a child. Thinking back on it all, she even began to feel quietly proud of herself. Her son was studying in such luxurious conditions. It was great that he hadn't died. Berta quickly found the address of the school. As she approached the wide gate, she looked once more into her half-opened bag. There was a nice little package of glossy paper. Last night she had purposely gone to a high-end boutique and bought the most expensive scarf for teenagers. She gave as much for that scarf as she never gave even for her coats. But she is full of joy for this decision. Her son belongs to the elite. He will not wear anything. Surely the Malberg family has shaped his taste for good things. But could this family love him as much as his own mother loved him? That, for Bertha, was an open question. Bertha walked up to the guard's booth and knocked. "Can I go to school? My son's teacher called me in." "What is the teacher's name?" the guard asked menacingly. Bertha hesitated. Mrs. Hartley seems to be." "Yes, Mrs. Hartley." "I'm sorry, there is no such teacher here. We can't let you in," said the guard menacingly. Bertha was very upset. That afternoon she sat outside the school until almost evening. She had hoped to see a crowd of students and see her baby among them. But here it turns out everything is organized differently. Luxury cars drive up to the school, automatic gates open, cars enter the yard and leave in a couple of minutes. You don't just see students at this school on the street. The next day, Bertha headed for the Malberg family home. Although there was much less hope. This family lives in a guarded neighborhood where only their own people have access. But Berta didn't give up hope. What if her son went out for a walk with his friends? Maybe he will be out of the palace on some boyish business of his own. Children love freedom. The Malberg family should not keep her son in confinement. The thought made Bertha feel angry and resentful of fate. As she approached the Malberg family home, Bertha saw the same picture: a high solid fence, a heavy automatic gate, and a small guard booth. It's not safe to go in there. They might suspect trouble. Then Bertha could never come here or to the school again. And so an endless number of days passed. For Berta, looking at the high gate with hope was now a new way of life. It was frustrating for Berta that in her search for her son, she found no time at all for her daughter. Christy had become withdrawn lately, spending a lot of time in her room and hardly talking to her mother. Berta noticed this, but did not give up her goal. She needs at least at a distance to look at her son. One day, however, the day came. Berta, as always, came to the territory of the elite school genius. She no longer tried to get inside, only watched from a distance and hoped for the case when the boy still decided to leave the gate. If the driver is sick, if he is late, and the impatient child decided to meet the car outside the gate. On one such day, a crowd of boys came out of the school gate. There were 10 or a little more than 10 of them. There were a few girls among them. It looked like they were going on a hike. Each child had their backpacks with them and were not dressed in their school uniforms. Berta approached the children and cautiously asked, "Guys, is there anyone among you who knows Malberg? He goes to this school. Who doesn't know him?" "Everybody knows him," said the fat boy with the important look. "It's me," said a voice in the crowd. Berta saw the boy in front of her, through whose eyes her husband Rhodes was looking at her. She saw in front of her blonde hair on the boy's head, and the sharp nose and broad forehead one and the same as the boy's grandfather, Rhodes' father. Berta had not the slightest doubt that this was her son, nor was her heart silent. It beat so hard and was filled with so much tenderness that she was ready to take the boy in her arms and run away. But such an unwise step might hurt her now. "Cupid, you are such a handsome, clever, and diligent boy. Come to me, I'll kiss you," said Berta, and ran first to the boy herself. Cupid took a step back and covered his face with his hands. Berta hugged him and pressed him against her. "And good people gave you a present. Here, take this scarf and wear it always. What else can I give you? Just tell me, I'll get it for you. And please, please go outside the gate more often," whispered Berta. At that moment, the teacher appeared from the gate. "Children, our bus is coming. Quickly prepare to board." Berta didn't want to let her son go, but he was already pushing the strange woman away with all his might and trying to run towards his friends. "Woman, who are you? What do you want from the boy?" asked the teacher in a suspicious tone. Berta couldn't find the strength to answer the teacher. Her heart was torn to pieces. On the other hand, she had just hugged her son. Most importantly, he is alive and living a wonderful life. True, he doesn't know his own mother. Berta silently stepped aside. The teacher went toward the children. At that moment, Emma opened a beautiful branded bag, took out a stylish scarf and tried it on. "Emma, what have you got there?" the teacher asked. "The scarf was given to me by that aunt over there. She said it was given by good people," Emma replied. "You shouldn't accept gifts from strangers. Didn't your parents tell you that? Take the scarf back to your aunt." "No, let me take it back," said the teacher. But at that moment a huge bus pulled up. The children crowded around the front door of the bus and started to get on one by one. The teacher decided to personally follow the process and stayed there. After a few minutes, she decided to dispose of the gift. Simply she left a beautiful bag next to a street trash can. Bertha barely waited for the bus to leave. Then she ran to the street trash can, grabbed the paper bag and ran away. Now she sleeps with that scarf every night. Her son touched it. It has her child's energy in it. She had hoped to at least smell her son's scent through this scarf, but there was very little of it there. Months passed, followed by years. Berta never stopped watching her son. She didn't go that close to him anymore. There were a million questions running through her mind. Would her son believe her? Maybe he wouldn't want another family, even if it was his own. Emma was used to a completely different standard of living in a wealthy family. Bertha won't be able to provide him with even a fraction of that kind of life. Maybe we should wait until the son grows up. But after all, the longer the time passes, the more likely it is that the son will become a completely different person. Christy had managed to accept the fact of having a brother in the meantime. She, too, secretly longed to see him, to get to know him and become closer. She saw her mother's suffering and also wondered a lot of questions. Would her brother want to communicate with them or not? Would he disappoint his mother when she finally found a way to approach him and tell him everything? When Emma turned 15, Bertha learned that he was seriously interested in swimming. Now she started following all the teenage sports events in Whitsville. She even attended a few swimming competitions, hoping to catch a glimpse of her son, but he wasn't there. Another time, she managed to see Cupid quite by accident. Deep in the night, Berta was returning from work. The restaurant where she works closes only after the last customer has gone home. That night, the guests sat up until almost morning. After the restaurant closed, Berta decided to walk home through the blossoming city. As she passed a karaoke club, a crowd of young people came out of the establishment. They were making noise among themselves. They were clearly having fun. Some of the boys were grabbing the girls by the waists and walking in different directions. "Hey Cupid, how long do we have to wait for you? Get on the car and let's go, or we'll leave you here," said one of the guys. The others continued to talk among themselves in raised tones. Berta stopped and turned her head towards the exit of the karaoke club. A grown-up Cupid in stylish clothes was walking straight toward her. When he got close enough, Bertha noticed his reddened eyes. It was obvious that the child had been up all night. Berta's heart was pounding so hard, she thought it was about to jump out of her chest. She was ready to be the first to run to him, to embrace him, to rub his blonde hair, to hold him close to her, and never let him go. While she was dreamily thinking about her son, he was literally 2 steps away from her. Cupid cast a quick glance at her and passed silently by. Bertha stared after him until he got into a car with his friends and walked out of sight. As she walked home, she was plunged into anxious thoughts. Could the child be growing up spoiled? Is it reasonable for a teenager to be in entertainment venues until morning? If he drinks alcohol there or gets involved with bad company? Berta was seriously worried. She wanted to contact Athena Malberg and reprimand her for her son's bad upbringing. But no, her time had not yet come. Bertha walked through the narrow streets and stopped at one of the small gates. It was Viola's house. Ever since Viola had come to tell her the news that was important to her, they had become friends. From time to time, they invited each other to visit. Her son Eddie and Bertha's daughter, Christy, became friends. Bertha considered Viola her only friend and help in finding her son. Viola gave good advice and always comforted Berta, assuring her that justice would be served someday. Today, Berta was in a particular hurry to see Viola. She came to her friend's house with a stack of newspaper clippings. As soon as she sat down at the table in Viola's house, she began to show each clipping. Here it says that the future heir to the board, Emma Malberg, participated in a sporting event. Here it says that he participated in a charity event and even made a speech. Bertha told it all with pride in her eyes and excitement in her heart. Then she hugged her friend and cried for a while. Only when she had said everything and felt calmer inside did Berta notice that she hadn't asked her how Viola was doing. And she doesn't look quite the perky woman she used to be. "I'm a little sick, I think, Berta. I went to the doctor a month ago. He didn't exactly give me a rosy diagnosis. Of course, I'll fight as hard as I can. I'll fight for Eddie and my husband and everybody else. But the rest is up to God. You don't usually live to a ripe old age with this diagnosis," Viola said. "Oh my God, my dear Viola, I can't believe it. How can this be? What an injustice. The main thing is not to give up. Keep that attitude like you have now. You're the one who keeps everyone going and motivates them to action. What would we do without you? Your Eddie's such a promising guy. He's about to graduate from college and become a big man. You're gonna be babysitting grandkids. Just hang in there and keep your spirits up, Viola." "Thank you, Berta. As it is, so it shall be. You know, I had the idea of coming to see you myself after I talked to the doctor. You and I have an important case. I'm the only witness to your son's story. I'd like to help you set the record straight while I'm alive. Otherwise I can't be calm," said Viola and took Berta's hand. "Do you think, Viola, perhaps I should go straight to the Malberg house and tell everything? Or is there some other way? I've been living in torment every minute of the day all these years. I've always relied on you in this matter. Can you give me some advice?" Berta asked. "Your son is already 29. He's a reasonable adult man. I think you can start taking more active steps. Your main goal is to catch the moment when you can tell him everything in private. I think it's time to make a move. How to find him and where to catch him, you're the master of that. I just want to get my witness statement in. I think it will be useful to you in solving this question," said Viola. After a long friendly conversation, the women said goodbye warmly. Berta thought all the way about Viola's fate. She might be gone. Berta refused to believe it, but life is so organized that everything can change in an instant. Viola is really needed in this matter. With these thoughts in mind, Bertha turned toward the Malberg family residence. For 6 years now this has been her new route. Before that, Bertha had followed her son to his university for 5 years in a row. He graduated from the most prestigious university in Wittsville with honors. While he was getting his education, Berta still regularly came to the courtyard of the university, sat on one of the benches, and looked for a familiar face in the crowd. Cupid by this time had grown into a very pleasant young man. He came to the university in his own luxury car. He wears exceptionally branded clothes and is always surrounded by a crowd of friends. Berta even remembers the faces of several girls who practically never leave his side. Berta managed several times to get close enough to smell the aroma of his perfume. Years passed. Amma successfully graduated from university. On the day of the awarding of the diploma at the university was the press. Photos with the diploma in the hands of Amma were printed in several publications, notes Bertha cut out faithfully and always carries with him. A short time later, Amma began his governmental affairs at the residence of the Malberg family. The end of Austin Malberg's term is approaching, and the townspeople are sure that the heir, Amma, will be no less worthy ruler of the town. But the election decides everything. Although in this city traditional social foundations prevail, the principles of free will of the people have not been cancelled. So Amma will have to go through elections before accepting the management of the city for the next 20 years. Although the town's residents considered the election a formal event, it is an important event where the Malberg family must once again prove its superiority, competence and historical right to be responsible for the fate of the unique Ubuntu people. The Grammy restaurant was awarded a Michelin star last year. Now there is no shortage of people who want to spend an evening here. From the large number of guests coming not only from other cities, but also from other countries, the management decided to work around the clock and without weekends. Of course, the staff will receive bonuses for the difficult schedule. Berta found it difficult at first to work 24 hours a day without a break, but she was motivated by the new level of income. She can now save more money to buy gifts for her son, who will have an important meeting and a serious conversation with her someday. Christy often scolds her mother for not feeling sorry for herself. She successfully graduated from university and got a job in a prestigious company. Now, well advanced in her career, she has a good income. She was able to buy a cozy house for her mother. In the future, she intends to marry her young man and move to live with him, and the house will remain entirely in the possession of her mother. Despite a stable life, Bertha does not know how to sit still. Almost all her actions and events in her life revolve around her son. In these almost 20 years that she has been trying to approach him, she has learned a lot. She has become knowledgeable about politics. She knows very well the lifestyle of the urban elite. She knows a great deal about her son, knows all his hobbies and interests, all his achievements and failures. Berta got used to her job a long time ago. Cleaning up after other people was not something shameful for her. She considered putting things in order and cleanliness a special mission. Life throws you chaos and dirt, and you transform everything into order and cleanliness. Thanks to this approach, she always handled her duties with brilliance. She was praised by the management, often wrote bonuses and incentives. True, Christie does not miss a chance to persuade her mother to quit this hard work and rest. Berta does not agree to such a life. Interesting people often come to their restaurant. Among them are movie and music stars, politicians, and other famous people. Only rare persons from this circle behave frivolously. Mostly they are very attentive and friendly. Recently, a famous singer was here. There were always rumors about him among people that he had a bad temper. Berta was not particularly interested in this man's work. She paid attention to him only because of the fact that on the day of his visit to the restaurant, Grammy at the entrance gathered a crowd of his fans. They were mostly young girls. When the pop star appeared on the horizon, the girls seemed to lose their minds. They took off their clothes and threw them on him, trying to take pictures against his background. The star's security escorted him into the restaurant hall with difficulty. Bertha watched this madness and went back to her work. At this moment, she was cleaning the front of the latrine. There's no dirt there as such, but Bertha keeps an eye on it and every half hour did a preventative light cleaning. This time she hummed to herself and was completely absorbed in the process. No one seemed to be around. When she finished wiping the floor and turned to the door, she was amazed. The very pop star was standing humbly in the corner and looking at her with a smile. "You are making beauty here, and now it is inconvenient for me to tread on such splendor. I apologize for not noticing you." Berta was frightened at the thought that this scandalous guide might complain to the restaurant management. "I respect that kind of labor. I'm sure you know that my mother paid for my conservatory education with that kind of labor. Those were hard times. My mom worked most of her time. Now I take her around the world, the best hotels, the best resorts, all for her." "And tell me, do you have children?" the singer asked. "Yes, I do. There are 2 of them. My daughter lives with me, and my son does not live." Berta lowered her gaze, then gathered all her tools and rushed to the exit. "Sorry again, I have to go." "Bye-bye," the singer shouted artistically after her. After this incident, Berta thought the whole evening, maybe she should go to this man and tell her story. Maybe he knows her son and will help arrange a meeting. Of course he knows Cupid. All singers and singers of all times have served the political elite. But the singer is unlikely to believe that the future ruler of the nation was born to this woman. Bertha decided to put the thought out of her mind. Let things go on as they are for the time being. She had waited 20 years, she would wait another. After finishing her shift, Berta bought a stack of fresh newspapers on her way home. The election race had already begun in the city. From today, for exactly 1 month, each candidate will meet with the people and tell them about themselves. In the end, the people have to decide which one of them is worthy of being in power for the next 20 years. It will be practically the second person in the country after the king and his ministers. Besides Cupid, Bertha also knew his opponents well. The most ardent opponent of the Malberg family is the son of the country's former finance minister, diplomat and politician with a decent experience, Arthur Waldy. He is said to have great ambitions and is ready to do anything for power. Berta was very worried about this. Amma is very young. He is only 30. All his opponents are much older. But she hoped that Austin Malberg would not stay on the sidelines and would definitely use his authority to appoint his only son and legitimate challenger to the position of Whitesville's chief executive. Tonight at the Grammy restaurant is a little different from other nights. There are not as many people. There are even free tables. Recently, the restaurant manager was stating that another important guest was coming tonight, that the entire staff needed to be on alert. After a while, the restaurant staff moved and fussed. Perhaps the future ruler was already in the room. Berta was sitting idly leafing through her papers when the manager called her into the restaurant's guest room. They said that a man had spilled something on the floor and needed to clean it up quickly. Bertha grabbed her work tools and hurried to the freestanding VIP section. She quickly arrived, and by the corner of her eye, she noticed that a group of young men were sitting in the VIP room. They were talking noisily among themselves and having fun. Berta often worries when she does her job in front of guests. In her work experience, she has met people who can complain to the restaurant management about anything. In such cases, the supervisor reprimands Berta and the restaurant manager personally. He has long ago convinced them that they are personally responsible for the reputation of the restaurant. Therefore, the slightest mistakes here lead to long-term stress later on. Bertha was hastily picking up shards of glass from the floor. She tried not to miss a single shard, so she frantically examined the floor under the chairs. Seeing a small glittering shard in the far corner, she decided to quickly remove it and crawled under the table. As she climbed out from under the table, she barely had time to realize that she was in too uncomfortable a space and should have been twice as careful. Just then, the clinking of a broken glass sounded again. Small shards of glass flew sideways. A few drops of red liquid that looked like wine followed them. One of the people sitting at the table jumped out and shrieked, What kind of clumsy people walk here, huh? It's not a restaurant. It's like a bawdy house." Berta looked at the shouted man and was stunned. It was her Cupid. He was standing right in front of her, face to face, spreading his arms in different directions. His white pants and white shirt were covered in huge red stains. Apparently, Bertha had touched the wine glass and it had fallen first onto Cupid, then to the floor. "Get the steward quickly. Is there anyone here who cares?" Emma shouted again. Bertha felt the ground slipping from under her feet. She did not notice that her lips began to speak. "Cupid, son, forgive your poor mother." "Woman, what kind of son am I to you? There's no need for sentimentality. You have to know where you are and match it." Cupid looked menacingly at Berta and continued to demand the restaurant manager. Berta's tears rolled down her eyes, not from the fact that she had just earned trouble at work. She had just realized that this guy wouldn't recognize her as his mother, even though the outward similarities were there. The restaurant manager came running in quickly. He is a middle-aged man with a lot of experience in his business. He always knew how to get out of difficult situations with customers and without much thought sacrificed the restaurant staff. His position is clear. The restaurant's reputation is paramount, and there are plenty of people willing to work here. "I sincerely apologize, Mr. Malberg. The staff will certainly be punished. Please report to the maintenance room, and your clothes will be cleaned right away. And as compensation, please accept on behalf of our establishment a Chateau Lafite 1787, said the manager. "What are you doing standing there like that? Quickly put everything away and into my office," muttered the manager to Bertha. She barely managed to wipe away her tears and squeezed out of herself. "Cupid, Amir Malberg, I have a very important conversation for you. I've been trying to tell you this for 20 years now." Bertha didn't expect such boldness from herself. Cupid, who had just followed the waiter into the technical room, turned around, came as close to Berta as possible, looked at her for a few seconds and said, addressing those seated, "Friends, I told you that Arthur Valdi is ready to use any means against me. This is the woman I have been watching in my horizon for a long time. She's been following me. I've wanted to turn her into the police for years, but I don't want to sink to Arthur's level. His pathetic intrigues won't help him anyway, because I'm the only decent man in the city manager's office. And let the restaurant management check this woman for spy activities. If the police find out, it could damage the reputation of the owner of this fine establishment. And I do not want that. He is a close friend of my father," said Cupid, and spread his hands in different directions. The restaurant manager grabbed Berta by the elbow and dragged her away from the hall. In the manager's office, she was tortured for a long time whether she had really followed Emma Malberg and why she had done so. Bertha did not deny it and told everything as it was. The manager did not believe her words and advised her not to engage in nonsense. He said that such tricks will not work with this family. Every famous persona has dozens of such stalkers, and in the end they achieve nothing, but only make fame to their object of tracking. Berta, you are a grown woman, and not even a girl stupid and in love, to make up such fairy tales. Stop your fantasies and see the principal tomorrow. I'm afraid that nothing good will happen to you, said the manager. Berta didn't say another word. She went home without waiting for the end of her shift. A couple of days later, the people of Wheatsville were already discussing a new political scandal. The favorite in the election, Malberg, publicly insulted a woman, threw a wine glass at her and called her the last words, and then his heinous act was attributed to the intrigues of his opponent Arthur Valdi. When the incident with the broken glass took place in the restaurant Grammy, nobody paid much attention to the fact that someone was filming the whole process on a phone camera. Cupid was sure his friends wouldn't go for such a thing, but they did. The video was a bit edited. There was no sound, just pictures of Malberg waving his arms and the poor woman standing next to him crying. The people of Wheatsville have always had high morals. It's unthinkable for them to see a man's unworthy behavior, and in public, and from such a noble family as the Malbergs, and on the eve of the election for the next 20 years. Arthur Valdi's supporters were overjoyed to hear the news. Now they didn't miss a single television program or live event where they didn't accuse Emma Malberg of gender chauvinism, of misogyny, of bad morals, of being overly expressive, of not knowing how to behave in public. And when it became known that the offended woman was also fired from her job, Arthur Valdi's team issued a series of leaflets for this occasion. In them, they posted a frame from a video where Cupid is waving his arms and a crying woman is standing next to him. The picture was accompanied by fiery speeches like this: "It's time for us to end the unequal rights of toilers and higher-ups. It is time to restore gender equality. We should have amended our labor law a long time ago, so that ordinary workers would not suffer from such right-wing lawlessness of the leaders. Only Arthur Valdi, with his brilliant experience and knowledge, can bring order to this system. He will bring justice in the life of every citizen. He will save our nation from the degradation that has overtaken our lives now." And it was a brilliant political move. The people believed those words. Emma Malberg's predominantly high ratings plummeted, while Arthur's soared. Emma Malberg had a series of meetings scheduled with the voters. People abruptly stopped coming to these meetings. If they did, it was to be booed for unworthy behavior. They poked at the flyers with the image of Berta crying and expressed their distrust in the young man's integrity. The situation had to be urgently rescued. Cupid was not up to the task. Austin Malberg, when he learned of this scandal, came to his son's aid himself. He interrupted his foreign vacation, and he and his wife Athena urgently flew to Wheatsville. Upon arrival, Austin long reprimanded his son. "Everything was going great. You have a whole team working on you. Your image has been well thought out. You've had good things said about you. Why the hell are you getting into these incidents? It's unforgivable for a politician's son." "Dad, it wasn't really a catastrophic incident. I just acted like a customer in a high-end restaurant and asked for action, that's all. And this woman cried herself to tears. And by the way, I've actually seen her many times in different places. I think she was sent from Arthur's office on purpose. This whole incident was planned by them. I have no other explanation." Emma was indignant. Father clutched his head and said, "It doesn't matter if she was planted or the real thing happened by accident, but we have to work with the real picture now. What do we have? We have a big screw-up. There's a formal victim who's the woman. Since we're running out of time, we need to resort to quick and easy solutions. You go to the restaurant manager and ask for this woman to be reinstated. Then you find this woman and bring her to the press center, where she must declare peace between you and forgive you. That's the only way we can get some of your ratings back." "All right, Dad, I'll try to talk to the director. He seems to be an old acquaintance of yours. Give me his contacts. I don't think I can handle a woman on my own. I can't talk to a man when he's crying in front of me. Why don't you take her, Dad? Cupid said. The father, of course, did not agree to take on his son's problems. He argued that a politician should be able to solve and not such tasks. So Amma had to go to the restaurant alone. Arriving at the restaurant Gremi, Amma found its owner in his office. He is a middle-aged Italian man named David. He used to have some common business with his father and even came to their house. Cupid vaguely remembers that time. He explained the purpose of his visit and asked for the woman to return to work immediately. David did not delay the matter and immediately dialed Berta's phone number. Berta, good afternoon. There is good news for you. Could you come to the restaurant urgently? Said David. Excuse me. You are Christy, yes. What about her? When did she fall ill? Well then, tell your mother she's been reinstated. When she recovers, she can come back to work. She'll retain her full salary and all other social security benefits. Cupid sat across from David and exhaled with relief. He hung up the phone and spread his hands. You see how simple everything is. One word Malberg dismisses, another reinstates. But my friend, I sympathize with you that this incident has turned into a political scandal and has really hurt your rating. Then you have to try to do something about it yourself, while there is still time before the election, David said. At that moment his phone rang. Oh, there's our Berta calling. I'm sure she'll be at work tomorrow. Yes, hello? Yes, Christy, I'm listening. Why won't she come back? Put her on the phone. I want to talk to her myself. How is that a final decision? You can't do that, Christy. She's the most dedicated person in the business. The Grammy's glowing reputation is partly due to your mother, among other things. So we don't accept any other answer than yes, said David. Then he turned towards Cupid and spread his hands again. Look, her daughter says she doesn't want to go back to work. So what do we do now? Cupid stared at David. Alternatively, try a personal visit to her house. I'll text you her address right now. They said she's sick, so bring some oranges. Go apologize for the cause. Convince her to come back to work. We'll be waiting for her, David said. He took out a piece of paper and began to write Berta's address. Cupid stared thoughtfully out the window. When Mr. Austin returned home, Athena was resting in the garden of their huge house. Austin, you're back at last, darling. Tell me, how's our son doing? Have you come up with anything? We tried to think of something together, but other than publicly absolving our son of his guilt, I can't think of anything else. And there's no hope for him. You know he's inexperienced at this sort of thing, said Austin, sitting down beside Athena. My God, I wish it had worked out. Maybe we shouldn't have gone on vacation right before the election. Who would have thought that this Waldy would go to such lengths? Athena said indignantly. It's nothing, dear. Our son is just at the start of his political Olympus. He has much to learn. This time we'll somehow handle the situation and help him win the election. And then he will gradually enter the field and learn to cope with his own problems, said Austin. I hope so, said Athena, without lifting her head from the phone screen. There's so much bad stuff being written about him, it's giving me a headache. It's just unbearable. How can people be so confident in judging a situation in which they were not even involved? It's just outrageous, Athena continued. It's a common occurrence in politics. Don't you and I know it? How many times have I myself been involved in high-profile scandals without fault? So, darling, just take it easy. Thank you, Austin. And don't get too nervous. You and I still have places to fly and things to see. Athena looked at her husband and smiled. The video's edited. I happened to find the original version, and it's a little different, Austin said thoughtfully. The woman didn't actually drop the glass on our son on purpose. It looks very natural, a typical restaurant incident. Except there's a moment where this woman refers to Cupid as her son several times. Austen looked questioningly at Athena. She literally jumped out of her seat. Her heart was racing, she was dizzy. But she was doing her best not to give off that reaction. Maybe she's sick. Maybe she's obsessed with an idea. I've heard there's a mental disorder where patients become delusional about ideas and public personas. I suppose that's what Athena said and turned away in a hammock. Anything could be, anything could be. Austen whistled softly and headed inside to continue his business in the workroom. Bertha barely waited until morning to get out into the fresh air and sit in the yard. Her strength quickly waned, however, and she returned to the house with Christie's help. Christie had hardly slept all night, sitting at her mother's headboard. The medicines prescribed by the doctor did not help much. Berta is hot and cold. It's the first time in her life she's been so sick. Maybe because she had a strong incentive not to be sick before. Now there's nothing inside. She tries not to talk much about her inner pain and longing, so as not to inadvertently hurt her daughter. Bertha admits she already spent too much energy, time and effort on her son. The daughter, meanwhile, was living her own life. She has grown up independent enough to start earning early, to take over the household completely, to pay all the family's bills, to keep up with her studies, and then her job. That said, she regularly achieves new heights. She gets a promotion at work, or enrolls in new courses and learns something new. Berta had recently noticed all these phenomena. Her mind was usually preoccupied with Cupid. Now she was worried that her daughter might hold a grudge against her. Berta was surprised to notice that she didn't even know Christie's boyfriend, but they have been dating for several years. Such thoughts overwhelmed Berta in bed. She found it increasingly difficult to breathe. She thought of Viola. She wondered how she was, poor thing. Berta was afraid to call or visit Viola again, and instead of her friend's usual kind smile, she would hear bad news from her loved ones. Nor can she find the right words to comfort Viola. That's why Berta has grown a little distant from her. She regretted it bitterly now, too. Only now, lying in bed, she realized how important the attention of others is for a sick person. Bertha felt the severe headache that had been attacking her since the night before. In order not to cause her daughter distress, Bertha tried hard not to give away her agony. She struggled to raise her head and carefully reached her hand to the nightstand beside her bed. When her fingers almost reached the glass of water, a severe shortness of breath seized her, and she had to lie down in her seat. After a while, she repeated her attempt. Now, instead of picking up the glass, she dropped it on the floor. Christie jumped out of her chair and ran over to her mother. She was not distracted by the spilled water and ran to the kitchen to fetch a new glass of water. Bertha drank the water and felt relieved. "Daughter, you've been up all night. I'm worried about you. You should get some sleep." "Don't worry about me. I'll get better soon," said Berta. "Your mom, don't worry about me. I'm fine too. At work, I warned everyone that I'll be home for a couple days. No one objected. My supervisors understand me. So the main thing is to get well." Mama Christie kissed her mother on the forehead and sat down in the chair again. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Bertha didn't pay much attention because it could be anyone. Usually at this time of day, either the milkman, the mailman, or a representative of the utilities came in. My daughter handles them herself. Christie got up from her chair and headed for the front door. Looking through the peephole, she couldn't believe her eyes. She went back to her mother's room, closed her door from the outside, and went to greet her guest. It was Malberg. "Hello, I'd like to see Berta. I have an important conversation with her," said Emma, somewhat surprised, but the girl opposite had very similar features to him. "Hello, Malberg. You've had enough. My mom is already seriously ill. She's not going to work. You don't need to bother her about that. And on the other matter, I think it's useless to even talk," said Christie. "I'm sorry, I don't intend to offend her. On the contrary, I realize my guilt and I want to apologize to her. Here, I brought you some goodies. Cupid slipped a big bag to Christie. Thank you, I'll give it to her. But please be honest. Are you really only interested in my mom's job decision? You have no other agenda. Is there nothing else you want to talk to her about? Christie asked, not hiding the tremor in her voice. By now, she herself was overwhelmed with emotion. The young man across from her was like her male reflection in a mirror. They even seemed to be the same height. Christie, along with her mother, waited for the denouement of this story. She, like any other girl, all her life dreamed of having a strong and reliable brother by her side. And such a brother she could have had, if not for the devious schemes of other people. Christie had tears in her eyes. Cupid, she is gravely ill, and your role in this is huge. Admit it honestly. You heard yourself that you and I were born twins, and you were given to another family. Your mother was deceived that you died. She found out 10 years later. She's been trying to get closer to you ever since, trying to find different ways. She's been waiting for you to grow up, but I think she did it for nothing. Christie said, I need to see her anyway. I don't deny what she said. My grandmother told me before she died that I had a birth mother and I should find her. But my mom told me she didn't, that she gave birth to me. My father, by the way, also hinted that I might have another mother. I didn't pay much attention to all those words, so give me a chance to talk now. Cupid is also overwhelmed with emotion. Come in, but don't hurry. I'll get her ready, said Christie, and left for her mother's room. Emma stayed waiting in the living room. Mom, Emma came to you. He wants to talk to you. Not about your work, but about something important. Christie smiled through her tears. Berta instantly forgot that she was seriously ill. She abruptly got out of bed and frantically began to gather her hair. Mom, don't hurry. He's waiting in the living room, said Christie, and began to dress her mother. Bertha went out into the hall and stopped for a moment at the threshold. Then she went back to her room, took out the scarf she had bought 20 years ago, and returned to the hall. Cupid sat pensive. Berta silently wrapped the scarf around his neck and asked, Remember, you were 10 years old. You were studying at Genius. At the beginning of spring you were going camping. Then I recently found out that you were alive, and with difficulty I tracked you down, said Bertha. Cupid nodded his head. Do you remember 17 years ago? You entered a swimming competition and failed to win any prizes. You were loudly angry with yourself in the locker room then. You were comforted by that woman and her driver. And 15 years ago in the late fall, you went to a karaoke club with your friends and skipped out until the morning. I remember all your speeches at the university, your lectures in front of the audience. I even remember once you were forced to clean up the university garden, and you ran off with 2 girls. I remember a lot of things, son. So you're right that I've been following you for a long time, just to see you from afar, Berta said. My grandmother once hinted that I should look for my family. Do you know her? Emma asked. No, not personally. But I suppose such a brazen deception as slipping her husband another man's child could not go unnoticed, said Berta. It's hard for me to make up my mind. This news is too sudden for me. I don't want to upset you, but the facts that you gave birth to me are not enough for me. My mother, Athena Malberg, raised me in the best conditions. She never gave a damn about me. She's still very caring. I can't believe this story. Cupid turned his head away from Bertha and his gaze fell on Christie. Her resemblance struck his mind again. Yes, son, I know. It's a very difficult question. That's why I've been waiting for you to grow up. It's enough that I've had time to tell you that. I ask you one thing. If this story ever comes out, don't hold it against me. I never even thought about passing you on to another family. When I got the news that you died in childbirth, I was depressed for 3 years. Then I cried intermittently for the next 10 years until my roommate from the maternity ward came to me and told me that she had overheard the devious plans of the clinic manager and another doctor. They planned that night to take you away from me and give you to your family, Berta said. After sitting for a while, Cupid said goodbye and left. No emotion was shown by him. He only said several times that he found it hard to believe that he needed to get into the story on his own. Lastly, he also apologized to Bertha in case he still couldn't accept the story and decided to leave things as they were, without any major changes. Bertha caught the gist of the thought. Cupid came home late at night. He was in a bad mood. He went straight to his father's study and entered without knocking. "Dad, I'm sorry. I got a favor to ask you." "So, how's it going? Did you manage to smooth things over?" Austin Malberg asked, removing his glasses from his eyes. "No, and probably not at all. I need to talk about something else. I think you and Mom have been hiding a very important thing from me for a long time." Cupid looked at his father questioningly. "What thing, son? Tell us. It will be interesting for us too," said the father. "Call Mom. Let's talk," said Emma, and without waiting for his father's reaction, dialed his mother's phone. "Mom, I'm here. I'm sitting in my father's office. Please come in. It's urgent." Athena felt something wrong today. All day long, she couldn't find a place for herself because of incomprehensible worries. Toward evening, she got a headache and took a nap. When her son called, she jumped out of bed and went to her husband's office with quick steps. "Son, my darling, how are you doing? How is your election campaign going?" asked the mother. "It's fine. Mom, please tell me, when you were in the maternity hospital and gave birth to me, who was next to you in the same room?" Cupid put a question to the question. Athena did not expect such a trap. She was confused and answered, "Oh, it's been so many years. Do you think I remember? There were some women, also pregnant, waiting for their babies. I didn't stay there long. I was discharged quickly." "Dad, you said I was born in a Dutch village. You weren't there. Are you sure that's how it happened?" Emma asked. Athena finally lost control of the situation. She cited a severe headache and retired to her room. Her father stared at one point and sat silent. Emma came out of his father's office and frantically searched for the phone number of one of his friends. Deep in the night, an elderly woman sat in the police station, not understanding why she had been brought here and what they wanted from her. No policeman would give the details of her detention. After a while, one of them came out of his office and asked to take the elderly woman to the temporary detention center. The woman cried and begged, but no one explained anything to her. At that time, 4 detectives were working in the archives of the Eden Clinic. They lifted all the documents of 30 years ago, found the right names, and compared all the data. In the morning, the report was ready. The documents were attached to the case and submitted to the chief investigator. Amir was waiting for the results of the case right in the investigator's office. "So, look at this case. It turns out that a woman named Berta gave birth to a boy and a girl 8 minutes apart. But then it says the boy died, and the morgue department didn't receive the boy's body that day, or the next day either. But 4 days later in the logbook appears a woman in labor, which is not recorded in the maternity ward. It turns out that one woman did not lie in the clinic and did not give birth. She just took the baby. Who these people are and how it happened, we now find out from those who worked that day." The interrogation of the elderly woman Valetti lasted about 2 hours. She didn't fight back for long. Her age at the time was well into her 80s. She honestly said that she had been approached by several acquaintances with a request to help get a child for a famous family. Athena Malberg is a close acquaintance of hers. Therefore, she did not refuse. Valetti admitted that she remembered this story all her life. She sincerely repented and begged for clemency. Emma at that moment sat in the far corner of the investigator's office and heard everything. When the grandmother began to cry, Emma approached the investigator and made a gesture with his head. The investigator called the police officers and they drove the decrepit Valetti out of the police building. On the way, they stopped at a convenience store and picked up a couple carts of all sorts of food. They brought Valetti back to the house, dropped off the food, and drove away in silence. Early in the morning, Austin knocked on his wife's room. Athena was still in bed. "Darling, how are you feeling?" he asked, bending over her. Not well, Athena was embarrassed to turn to face her husband. "It's time for us to talk about our son, darling. I hope you'll be honest with me. I have no beef with you, Athena. You hear me? Look here." Austin gently placed his palm on his wife's face and pulled her to him. The eyes full of tears looked up at him. "The appearance of Cupid in our family was also a surprise to me. The fact is that when I was a young boy, I was seriously injured and didn't pay much attention to it. When I became an adult, doctors warned me that I might never be able to conceive a child and become a father. At that point, you and I were already married. I couldn't tell you that because it was hard enough for you to be a part of our family. Besides, I loved you, just like I do now." Austin kissed Athena gently on the forehead. She abruptly got out of bed and looked at her husband. "Austin, I thought it was about me. I felt very guilty for not being able to give an heir to your family. I couldn't bear to disappoint your mother. Forgive me if you think I did something stupid, but I really wanted a child, even if it wasn't my own. So I had to make up this whole story about getting pregnant and my grandmother being sick and having to take care of her. In fact, Valetti helped me find this baby. Because his parents were young, unsettled, poor. We thought it was best for everyone. Believe me, Austin, in all these years, I've never regretted my decision, even if it was based on deception. But Cupid has given me so much happiness." Athena cried. "I'm of the same opinion, my dear," said Austin. "Well, don't worry about the future. Let him decide who to be with. He's a mature, intelligent guy. We'll support any decision he makes." The table in the restaurant Gremy was ready to receive guests. The Malbergs were the first to arrive. Austin and Athena greeted their son warmly. A little later, Berta and Christy joined them. A heavy pause hung over the table. Cupid asked for a moment of attention and began his conversation. "We are here today because we are connected to each other by a very thin and reliable thread of love. In a short time, I managed to reconstruct the story of 30 years ago. I will not describe the details, as you know. Each of you has informed me that I have the last word. I'd like to announce my decision. So, as of today, I consider myself to have 2 mothers and 2 fathers. One father was unable to appear before us as he is running on election results. Also, I am immensely happy to have gained such a wonderful sister." Cupid pulled Christy close to him. "And you, my dear adults, I ask you to get along with each other and support all my endeavors." At that moment, a woman with flowers in her hands entered the restaurant. "Viola, my dear, how glad I am to see you healthy and happy." As before, Bertha hugged her friend and called her to the table. On the way to the table, Viola greeted Cupid, also congratulating Christy on finding her brother. The guests were just about to raise their glasses when another man walked in from the street. It was one of the representatives of Cupid's office. He happily waved a piece of paper. "The election results are in. We have seen the entire counting process for ourselves. Malberg is the winner. Long live the ruler of our glorious city." Amir's associate shook his hand. "Boss, when you finish your family dinner, we'll see you in the office. There is a crowd of townspeople standing there. They want to congratulate you on your victory," said the young man and left the restaurant. That evening turned out just as Cupid had planned. However, as well as the rest of his life and the lives of his loved ones, including his mother Berta and sister Christy.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.